I'm going to give you 6 points today, and I hope that you can remember some of them so that you can go back and tell your friends about it. Where has our money gone? Okay, 6 points. We consistently overspend, right? So that's 1 point. We fail to save. That's 2nd point. We buy a lot of stuff with the money. That's 3rd point. We waste a lot of the money. That's the 4th point. 5th point, the government has spent some money that you don't even know about. And then the last point is, now the government wants even more money from you. Okay, so these are sort of like the main points on where the money has gone to, and I'll quickly go through each one and explain to you briefly. I don't have the advantage of visual aids or slides. I will just try to give you a flavor of what the government does with our budget so that you can see our perspective as legislators, especially on the side of the opposition. Let me tell you, just now Jazz said that the government has already announced our budget. The expenditure, projected expenditure is 264 billion ringgit. Let me just tell you right from the start that that is not the amount that the government will spend. Okay? The government will always spend more than what they announce. This is what the government has been doing for the past 4 years since Najib became finance minister. At the start of every budget, they will announce a figure, X figure, and they will never keep to it because they will always introduce supplementary budgets, on average 2 since Najib became finance minister. So let me just give you an example. For example, in the 2012 budget, the original projected expenditure was 230 billion. Do you know how much the government spent at the end of the day? 250 billion. 2 supplementary budgets. And this is how the government of Malaysia works. It's really, really cool. From a very negative perspective. For all of us, if let's say we need to spend more than we are earning, what do we need to do? We need to go out and borrow the money from our friends or from the bank, right? Before we can actually spend it. For this government, they will spend it and then they will come to parliament and say, okay, we already spent the money, we want you to approve it now. That is how they do it. So from 230 billion, they asked for 2 supplementary budgets, one of which was passed this year in June 2013 for 2012's budget. Right? So I just did a couple of calculations. From 2010 to 2012, the government over expenditure, that means the difference between what they originally announced in the budget versus what they actually spent. This is 2010, 11 and 12, 3 years only. Total 48 billion ringgit. Right? So this is where your money has gone. The government has spent more than they actually announced. And it will be the same for this 2014 budget. Trust me, mark my words, there will be at least 1 supplementary budget that will be introduced next year or the year after that, where the government has already spent the money, and then they come to parliament to go and seek our rubber stamp. They can do it because they control more than 50% of parliament. So that's first point. Where did your money go? The government has overspent a lot of it. The other problem that we have with our government is that the government also projects a certain government revenue that they will collect every year. And this, to their credit, they collect more than what they project. Maybe by squeezing you guys a little bit more. I'm sure that some of you in the last 2 or 3 years have received additional love letters from the Internal Revenue Service, LHDN. You have, asking for back taxes that have not been paid. So they squeeze the public, and one of the results is that they actually collect more money than originally projected. So for example, in 2012, the original projection was about 187 billion in revenue. In the end, they collected about 207 billion ringgit. 20 over billion more than what they originally projected, right? So the problem with this is that, yes, you collect more money, that's good. What we should do is, if you collect more money, if let's say, you are the average person, okay? If let's say suddenly you get a windfall from somewhere, maybe you have an inheritance or something, do you go out and spend it all? Maybe you spend a little bit, take a holiday for your family, but you don't go and spend 100% of it, right? You save some for a rainy day later. And that is what the government should do. It should take some of the extra revenue that it has collected and put it aside to reduce our government debt, which is over 500 billion now. But the government has spent it all. That is linked to the first part, which is the over expenditure. So they have failed to save. According to a report by the Malaysian Rating Corporation, MARC, over the past 10 years, the government has collected 91.5 billion more revenue than it originally projected. Right? So imagine if, let's say, they have taken just a part of the 91 billion, maybe half of it, and go and put it towards reducing our debt. Then what Wong Chen talked about just now, the 24 billion a year that we have to spend on repayment of our debt, we don't have to spend that much, which means that we don't have so much pressure to introduce things like the GST that we'll talk about just now. Second point, the government, first point, the government overspends. The second point, the government fails to save. Okay, the third point, we buy a lot of stuff with our budget. Just now, Wong Chen has talked about supplies and services, right? The supplies and services for this year is about 37 billion ringgit, which is about the same amount the government is going to spend on subsidies. But let me tell you, ladies and gentlemen, originally, our supplies and services was not so high. Our supplies and services budget has grown at a much higher rate compared with the overall budget, right? So, for example, in 2002, our budget was 104 billion ringgit. Okay, now it's increased in 2014 to 264 billion ringgit, right? So it's increased by about 1.5 times, 154%, give or take. At the same time, in 2002, our budget for supplies and services was only 11.9 billion ringgit, right? Now in 2014, 36.6 billion, right? Remember our budget, 104 to 264. Supplies and services from 11.9 to 36.6. An increase of 208%, more than twice. Budget increase only 154%, but the supplies and services budget increased by 208%, right? So that means a lot of it is actually wasted. I mean, not just mineral water stuff, but more expensive things, which is covered for partly in the National Audit Report, right? This includes things like the clocks that were bought at 100 ringgit, at 3,810 ringgit, whereas the actual value is 100 ringgit. Another example from last year was the binoculars that was bought with 56,000 ringgit, but actually the actual value was only about 1,940 ringgit. Those are very small examples, but if you, let's say, magnify it to a budget that's worth billions and billions of ringgit, you can see how much more markup the items are. Okay, that's the third item. We spend a lot on stuff. The fourth item is we waste a lot of stuff. We waste a lot on stuff. According to my estimates, what I did for the 2012 National Audit Report was I went through each of the 60 over ministries that was investigated by the audit report, by the Auditor General. And I estimated each item, how much did they waste? How much did they not properly allocate? And I came up with this figure, 6.5 billion ringgit. Right? That is an example of how much is wasted. For example, 2.5 billion was misspent on contracts for security guards that were asked to secure our schools. 2.05 billion ringgit. 500 million ringgit was wasted on cleaning contractors for schools. And these were contracts that were not properly enforced. That means you don't know whether the people showed up or not to clean the schools. 801 million ringgit was spent on the Malaysian Emergency Response Services, dialing your 999. And now, even though after spending 801 million ringgit, the drop calls was about 33%. And in this 801 million ringgit, those of you who would remember the news, includes lawatan sambil belajar, where a minister, it's not stated there is a minister, but I suspect that it was the minister, who went to Switzerland and spent 300,000 ringgit in 4 days. Right? I don't know how you can spend 300,000 ringgit in 4 days. Even if you stay in a 5-star hotel, you eat the most expensive food. The most you can spend is 20,000 ringgit a day. But this person managed to spend 300,000 ringgit. Right? 170 million ringgit spent on program Satu Susu Malaysia. For those of you who have kids whose kids go to school, you will know that this program is not very successful. You know why? Because it was stopped because many kids got food poisoning. Right? So these are just some of the examples. It does not include the 700 to 800 million a year that's spent on program Khidmat Latihan Negara, the National Service Program. And you know who benefits from the National Service Program? Yes, some of the kids go there when they shoot the guns and all that, they have fun. But the people who benefit most are the people who make supplies. right? Those who go and sell uniform, make the tents, the trainers who are employed to get, on a contract basis to go and give training. All these people, you spend about 500-600 million ringgit just on these things alone. And do you know who was the Minister of Defense when the National Service was first started? Can you remember? Najib. Right? So you can imagine who would be the ones who would benefit most from these contracts. I don't want to say the name, but I think you all can guess. And this does not include the 40 million ringgit that's spent on Permata every year. Permata is supposed to be a kindergarten program for geniuses, right? But the problem with this program is that it is, you set it up in many areas around Malaysia, and you only can have students who live within 7 to 10 kilometers of these kindergartens. I don't know much about geniuses, but I don't think they are necessarily located just within a geographical area. You usually would have to have a broader scope to go and encourage these geniuses to go and come together to study in a selected number of places, not spread them out all over the place. Okay? Okay, so that's the fourth point. How we waste a lot of it. The fifth point is, a lot of stuff that the government spends now, your taxpayers' money, your children's money that they will have to contribute to the tax coffers, is not reflected in the budget like what Wong Chen just said just now. The government guarantees. Let me just give you a few. 1MDB, 5 billion ringgit of government bonds were issued by 1MDB, and they are officially guaranteed by the government. 800 million of something called 1MDB real estate. What they are trying to do now, the Tun Razak exchange. It is also issued by 1MDB, guaranteed by the government. Another one called Dana Infra, 2.4 billion ringgit as of now. It is used for MRT construction. Khazanah issued 17.7 billion worth of bonds, also guaranteed by the government. KLIA2, 6 billion. Prasarana, 9.7 billion, runs the LRT and the rapid buses. And lastly, one example I give you, Turus Pesawat Sindiran Berhad. Have you heard of it before? Probably you haven't, right? But it is used to buy Mars planes, right? 3.4 billion. All these things, if let's say, and how many of you know what Mars share price is now? Less than 50 cents, okay? So if let's say Mars goes into financial difficulty, the government will have to bail out these companies. So all these kinds of, it adds up to 143 billion ringgit as of the end of 2012. Right? The government will have to issue more bonds for the LRT construction, for the continued expansion of the MRT construction, and whatever 1MDB does, the government will have to guarantee it as well. Ladies and gentlemen, these are of government guarantees that are explicit. Wong Chen talked about implicit government guarantees as well. These are things that you and I actually don't know about. Even us as legislators, we don't know really the true picture. Let me give you one example that's been in the news recently. PKFZ. PKFZ, all the bonds that were issued by Kuala Dimensi Sindiran Berhad that were used to build PKFZ, these were not government guaranteed bonds. It was signed off by Chan Kong Choi, whom may not be prosecuted after Ling Leong Sik's case. But all these bonds, totaling up to billions and billions of ringgit, in the end, the government had to bail PKFZ out. Right? These are examples of implicit guarantees, which we don't really know how much is out there. All the loans that the government makes to Shabas, for example, those are implicit guarantees, hidden guarantees that we don't know about. Right? So all this money, you and I also don't know when and where the government will have to cough up the money to pay. But these are very serious figures. Right? Lastly, the government wants to get more money from you, because it says that it's running out of money, right? Even though from what I showed you just now, it's actually the government's own fault because they overspend and they undersave. They are going to implement GST, right? So GST is expected to raise 33 billion ringgit in 2016, when it's first full year of implementation, right? So a lot of government people will tell you this. Oh, actually GST, you don't have to worry about it. Because sales and service tax, this is my last point, sales and service tax, and right now you're already paying taxes. You're paying sales tax, you're paying service tax, right? So the GST will just replace the sales and service tax. So you don't have to worry. Some of the MPs in Parliament even say, actually you don't have to worry, because if one tax that's 6% replaces two taxes, one of which is 10%, one of it is 6%, there's a big chance that the prices of goods may even decrease. I tell you, this is bullshit. Simple tax revenue says that now sales and services tax, they collect about 18 billion ringgit. For GST, they are going to collect 33 billion, almost double that of the sales and service tax. If they are going to collect more money, obviously they are going to tax more, which means that price is going to affect more prices. Right? Let me just give you a few examples. Your electricity price. How many of you here use more than 50 ringgit of electricity a month? I think Bangsar crowd, almost everyone here. If you use more than 50 ringgit, right now you are not taxed sales tax. But under GST, you will be taxed 6%. How many of you here, okay, for toothpaste and toothbrush, right, very basic items, no sales tax right now. Under GST, you will be taxed. If you go and buy Nescafe, right now, no sales tax. But under GST, there will be a GST tax. If you go and buy newspaper, right now, there's no sales tax. Under GST, there will be a sales tax. If you buy mineral water, right now, there's no sales tax. Under GST, there will be a sales tax. If you go and rent a badminton court, right now there's no service tax. But under GST, there will be a service tax. If you send your kids to a tuition center that has more than 500,000 ringgit in revenue, which is probably a lot of places in Bangsar, now there's no service tax. Under GST, there will be a service tax. All these items, I've checked already, the items that are exempt under the sales tax, over 200 pages. The items that are exempt under the GST, 21 pages. So 200 over pages versus 21 pages. You tell me, ladies and gentlemen, are you going to end up paying more taxes? Right? So definitely, the government wants more money from you. At the end of the day, we need to make sure that all these things are properly accounted for. And us as Pakatan Rakyat, our responsibility is to put pressure on the government. We are going to go all around Malaysia telling people about how bad GST is and why we don't need it, in addition to all the kinds of other information that I talked about just now. And I hope that you can ask more questions during the Q&A session. And this is where all your money has gone to. Thank you very much.